This weekend, Poland holds a decisive presidential runoff between two sharply opposed candidates. Liberal Warsaw Mayor Rafał Trzaskowski led a massive pro-European march in the capital, vowing to defend democratic values and strengthen ties with the European Union. In a rival demonstration, conservative candidate Karol Nawrocki rallied supporters around traditional values and a promise to restore what he called normality. He's backed by the nationalist Law and Justice Party. And he can also count on the backing of a major conservative conference taking place in Poland on Monday and Tuesday this week. For the first time, the Conservative Political Action Conference, better known as CPAC, is meeting in Poland. Now, among the invited speakers are top figures from the American right, including U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and possibly Vice President JD Vance, both, of course, close allies of Donald Trump. So what does this American export mean for European politics? And is this part of a coordinated international movement that is reshaping the conservative landscape across borders? Well, joining us now is Zsuzsanna Vegh, a political analyst and expert on Central European politics with the German Marshall Fund, to unpack what CPAC's arrival in Poland really signals. So welcome. We should say that this is being held in Poland just days before a pivotal presidential election. What kind of message does that send, both when you look at the situation locally and internationally?
Exactly. Thank you very much for having me. So the way you pointed out, indeed, the first CPAC Poland takes place right between the two rounds of the presidential election. And I think this has been a clear and very obvious tactical choice by the organizers, both by CPAC and the Law and Justice Party in Poland. This offers a potential boost for the PIS candidate Karol Nawrocki before the second round of a very tight presidential election, and also may signify a shift in the Law and Justice Party's attitude to develop an international profile. The party also has just recently taken over the leadership of the European Conservatives and Reformist political group. So I would say this fits into that picture of developing a stronger international standing for the party.
And so just to zoom out a bit, when you look at countries like Poland and Hungary, why are they attractive hosts for CPAC? Is it about strategic alignment, or is it about some deeper shared values?
I think it's both. So whereas the first CPAC in Poland is more of a tactical choice, the Hungarian CPAC is being organized just this very same week for the fourth time. This is a strategic construction site whereby the Hungarian governing party, Fidesz, is trying to position Hungary as an international hub for the international far right. This is also attractive for the American partners who see both Law and Justice and Fidesz as ideological allies. And we know by now, I think, about the new Trump administration, to which CPAC is also close, that it favors partnerships with ideological partners as opposed to European institutions. So these gatherings are good venues to develop those ties and invest in future partnerships.
And just to give us some examples that will help people understand this ideological overlap, where do we see politics in Hungary or Poland that align with CPAC's agenda?
Yeah, so very often the stance was that far-right parties, nationalist parties cannot really cooperate internationally. I think that it has its limits, but this perception by now is false. They have been very successful in finding overlapping agenda items, such as their shared fight against gender ideology, quote unquote, against the woke ideology, so progressive liberal ideas that they label as such. They share an anti-immigration agenda, whereas both Law and Justice Fidesz and the Trump-led Republican Party is showing a strong preference for national sovereignty over international cooperation. They both embrace traditional values, the centrality of families. So we see a wide range of topics on which they can bridge otherwise sometimes still present policy differences, but they can unite on their enemies mostly.
Yeah, as you say, at first glance, it seems almost counterintuitive, but with more and more examples that we're seeing today, would you say that we are seeing here, especially with this example from CPAC, the institutionalization of a global far-right network?
I would not use the word institutionalization. I think these connections are looser, but what we do see definitely is the stabilization of connections that last over longer periods of time. These parties by now are not on the fringes, politically speaking. They are well-established, stable features of their national political environments. And along these shared agendas, they have managed to develop lasting cooperations. CPAC itself has a long history within the US, and now this cooperation that we see evolving also goes back to several years. And I think with the Trump administration and related forces in power in the US, we will see it more and more being fleshed out in the next years.
So even if this is a more loosely organized network, I'm curious how much you think CPAC's involvement in Central Europe fits a pattern of political influence that could potentially undermine European EU cohesion.
I think we would be mistaken to underestimate the influence. I do believe that these gatherings have influence on politics. They can empower Eurosceptic sovereigntist voices within the European Union who can very well use such platforms to boost their visibility, to legitimize their standing in their national political landscape. And it's not necessarily gatherings like CPAC that would undermine EU cohesion and democratic norms, but the very actors who they empower, who they platform.
So when you look at this kind of transnational political organizing, should the EU or its member states be concerned about seeing these linkages?
I think the EU and the centrist mainstream forces should be concerned, but they should be primarily concerned about the lack of a sufficiently visible and strong enough counter-narrative. They have not been particularly successful in selling the European project as a success story, even though it has improved the lives of many across the continent. It has been crucial in developing the transatlantic relationship. And I think the main concern is that this is not well understood and increasingly less understood in the wider population, whereas forces which challenge the European integration, the transatlantic project as well, are gaining more and more ground. So centrist forces, mainstream forces should develop their own vision, counter-arguments to this rising tide of sovereigntist forces.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with us. It's been a fascinating interview to hear your insights. That is Zsuzsanna Vegh with the German Marshall Fund.
Thank you very much for having me.